Welcome to Harmony Talk, a podcast about dreamers and doers. Hear people from all walks of life tell us about their dreams and the moment they knew there was no turning back as they went from dreaming to doing. This podcast is sponsored by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. My name is Greg Frigoletto, your host for this episode. For today's episode of Harmony Talk, we are delighted to have a conversation with two-time Grammy-winning and four-time Grammy-nominated jazz singer-songwriter, pianist, and arranger, Nicole Zuraitis. Nicole is a trailblazing artist who has captivated audiences worldwide and has been described as having a heart as big as her remarkable voice. As a touring artist, she has headlined at the Newport Jazz Festival and Melbourne International Jazz Festival, to name just a few. As a recording artist, Nicole has released 5 albums as leader, and her 6th album, How Love Begins, co-produced with 8-time Grammy-winner Christian McBride, won the 2024 Grammy for Best Jazz Vocal Album. Her most recent album consists of covers beautifully arranged and is titled Siren Songs, Volume 1. Along with being a Grammy winner, Nicole has been honored and recognized through many prestigious awards and has collaborated with an extensive list of luminaries. Currently, she is also a proud educator and faculty member at both NYU and SUNY Purchase. Nicole, welcome to Harmony Talk.
Thanks, Greg. It was a pleasure to be here.
You know, it is truly our pleasure for you to be here. I know you are on a tour cycle as we currently speak, and I believe over the weekend you played in New York City at Lincoln Center. How did that go?
That was fantastic. I did The Real Ambassadors, which is kind of a jazz musical written by Dave Brubeck and Iola Brubeck for Louis Armstrong. And it's only been performed just a few number of times. And this is the second time at Lincoln Center. And I was so delighted to be part of it.
What an honor for you that must have been. And I know not only are you recently in New York, but in the coming days and months, your tour will be taking you all over the world. You'll be going to Germany, Switzerland, England, Spain. You'll be doing some shows in the States. So as we end this today, I'll be telling people where they could find those specific dates. And of course, I'll be encouraging them to catch you. But if we could, just to begin, I want to remind everybody that this is a podcast that looks to inspire by sharing stories, like your story, that demonstrate that dreams can become a reality even when there are great obstacles to overcome. In other words, dreamers become doers. Now, I have a lot that I'd love to cover, and we only have a short amount of time, but I think perhaps just to create context, we should probably start at the beginning. Okay, so we'll go way back. So for you, you're probably like everybody else, whereby, you know, our senses are great triggers for memory. So with that in mind, and with the career path you're on now, do you remember those first musical moments that inspired and motivated you to go down this path, whether it was, parents or, an older sibling that turned you onto a record collection or a music teacher? Tell us about the beginning for you.
Sure. Music felt like it was in my blood from a very young age. I would sing harmony to the television at like age 3, and my mom would go, "Wow, that seems not normal." And then, and then I had an old soul and was rather shy, shocker, but I would not sing in front of my parents because it felt too vulnerable. And so I surprised them when I was 11 years old by having my music teacher, Mr. Steinberg, make a tape recording of Don't Cry for Me, Argentina on the piano. And I sang Don't Cry for Me, Argentina at the school talent show at 11 years old. And so I've always had this kind of old soul mentality with music, but a deep, deep connection. It was my catharsis. And it's the reason why I do music today is to provide a cathartic experience for an audience, because it helped me feel and unpack so many things in my life. And after 9/11, when I saw Songs for New York, the concert that they did, and I remember being 16 years old and watching that concert and seeing what an impact music had and providing relief on like a very visceral level for millions of people, I said, that's what I want to do with my life.
That reminds me of something I've thought for a long time, that music resonates with people in so many different ways. And oftentimes I've heard people say that music and mood have a lot in common. How would you describe how music and mood are related?
Well, as a songwriter, music and mood, that's exactly what it is. Unfortunately for me, I don't treat songwriting like a job. I treat it like a form of therapy. so, so they go hand in hand. That's for sure.
So Don't Cry for Me, Argentina was your first performance, but that was maybe your first recording. Do you remember what your first performance was in front of an audience?
I mean, the first time I ever felt the eyes of the world was when I was playing the drum set at age 7, and we were in the parade. And I was the one doing the drum because I was one of the only people who could keep time. And everyone else was playing the recorder. And I remember just having this immense satisfaction that I was the glue holding the entire ensemble together, even at age 7.
A lot of responsibility.
Yeah, but then, I was dabbling in trombone and also in the piano and singing, but Don't Cry for Me, Argentina was, I think, the first thing I remember singing in front of an audience. But I think a moment that made a huge difference for me was singing with the Naugatuck Valley Community College Big Band. I sang So Many Stars with them, and it was my first time singing in front of a big band, and it felt like I was riding on a wave, like a gigantic wave in the ocean. And I said, I would love to capture this experience again. And now that's what I do for a living. If no one's ever asked that question. It's a beautiful question. But yeah.
When you were talking about your parents hearing you and having that wow moment, clearly you had, an uncanny ability from a very early age. And oftentimes kids are either going to run with that and embrace it or run away from it. How did that start for you? Did it turn you on to music in a way that was productive in the beginning or something else?
Well, strangely enough, though music came easily to me, I wasn't the cookie cutter visual star quality, right? I was an awkward kid. I was excellent at sports. I didn't care about my appearance. And so I didn't have that it factor that comes with a child star. And so I would be cast in like a musical, but as maybe the funny friend. But I would be singing Whitney Houston in the bathroom, but I didn't have that accessibility in my voice yet. So I wasn't really able to do what I was imagining myself doing. So that's how I started to sing opera of all things, because opera came first because technique. I was able to excel and had a wonderful teacher, Laura Mashburn, who was helping me develop a very strong vocal technique, which I rely on so heavily now, all these years later. As a kid, even though making music was easy, being in music was hard for me. And it continued to be hard and still continues to be difficult just because I'm not like the cookie cutter child star, or like I don't look like you're going to stick me on a billboard, which is a sad part of our entire world, but also the reality.
You said earlier that you've been an old soul really since you were a young child. And, here you are at the age you're at now, and you are a jazz musician. An old soul as a young kid means you probably, weren't in your room listening to Madonna or Def Leppard, like all of your friends probably were. Was this musical style and genre always something that you were drawn to? Hence the old soul part of who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I loved classic rock. I loved theater. I loved the records that were on the turntable at my house were Led Zeppelin, Jesus Christ Superstar, Carole King's Home, Intervision, Stevie Wonder, and Van Halen. What a strange loop. And then when I got introduced to Ella Fitzgerald, then I threw in Ella Fitzgerald love songs. And then when I got into big band, it's like Henry Mancini. And then because I was also pretty good at sports, I would get teased mercilessly at summer camps because while everyone was listening to Notorious B.I.G., which I also love, I was listening to the Pretenders and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and sitting in my room journaling and just being a strange egg, and then going back out on the soccer field or the tennis field and destroying them. So it was just like it was a very strange way to exist, to have like this dichotomy of like uber nerd, not really fitting in, but also excelling. It was a very strange way to think. I'm 40 years old now. Now I can think about those things going, wow, what a strange child.
But somehow you stayed on the path, and you must have turned to it in a way that really did start to work for you and view it as something probably that you loved, but also a conduit to making you feel good.
Yeah, I think there's the catharsis element again. Like I love singing a song And having someone come up to me afterwards and say, wow, that touched me, that made me think of my parent, my sister, my beloved person who passed away, my pet, all this stuff. I wrote a song for the lonely after I did a show at home for people living with dementia. And every time I would tell the story, people would just, I was like, wow, this is the purpose, is to heal through music. And so it did feel good to make music. And I think maybe that's one of the driving factors after all these years. It's a very difficult thing to be a full time musician. Nothing about it is easy. No matter how many Grammys you win, it's still like, where are we going to open the next door? And how do we open the next door? But if I was to go back to what you said, Greg, it's probably because it makes me feel good and hopefully other people feel good.
Well, I know it makes other people feel good. And that's really, I think, a good segue into where I wanted to go next. And as an artist, your albums have included original work as well as covers. And we've already talked about your album, How Love Begins, which I absolutely love, by the way. And that's the album that won the Grammy for Best Jazz Vocal Album. And aside from being obviously incredibly musical, it is also noteworthy because you're the only artist to have ever won the Grammy in that category who wrote and arranged the entire album yourself. And in what I do, I, Nicole, often have the opportunity to speak publicly at events. And each time that I do, I truly look at it as an opportunity to actually say something, not just as a task that I have to do. And in a similar way, when I listen to your album, How Love Begins, I find that your lyrics, they actually have something to say. As a simple example, on the song 20 Seconds, which is one of my favorites on that album, and the lines that really resonate, just because to me they have so much meaning, it goes like this: less than a minute to make the wrong decision, cloudy inhibition, shrouded in suspicion, and the only thing constant is time. They're just powerful words to me. And when you're writing, and in regard to being a songwriter, what is your process? And, do the words come first? Does the melody come first? How does that work for you?
First of all, it means so much that you have listened to the music and you like the music, because I don't look at the music that I write and go, yeah, I did that. It's awesome. I'm always thinking of it from a critical way. And even when you asked this question, I was just chatting with one of the producers of my next record, Larry Klein, and we were talking about lyrics and also this exact question, because what I tend to do is, it used to be when I was young, it would be harmony, melody, lyric. And the older I get, the more important I believe the lyric is. Lyric, melody, harmony. Going in the opposite direction. My Achilles heel is sometimes I'd rather have a song be done than perfect. And so the lyric part is the most delicate and also the most beautiful part, because it's not, once I release it to the world, it's no longer mine. People can perceive of it as they wish. So for my next album, Larry was saying, it would be really nice, Nicole, if you could take a little bit of the autobiography out of these and make
Yeah.
these are like uber personal, and make it a little bit more universal. And I said, this conversation happened 45 minutes ago. I'm going, you know what? That's a great note, because in 20 seconds, the lyric you just read, nobody knows what that song is about. What it is about is whatever they need it to be.
Right, how it's interpreted. But, my hunch is that the lyrics that I've read and heard from you are based on your own experiences. So as an artist, if you're going lyric to melody, if the lyrics resonate with you on a personal level, isn't that somewhat inspiring to create mood and tempo for the music that might follow it?
Yeah, absolutely. And from so many years of singing covers and bars, I know what a good melody feels like in my instrument to sing. So I love taking a lyric or a poem and setting it to music, because I've sung so many songs in my life that it's like a natural inclination for me to sing words. It's really fun to do. And my next album will lean a little bit more pop just by the nature of the beast. There's a lot of light in the cracks.
Just last night, there was a special on TV. Elton John and Brandi Carlile have a new album out. I don't know if you've heard of it or have any interest, but I love both of them.
I love them both so much.
Yeah, me too. And Brandi Carlile has a song on the album that she sang last night, just her and an acoustic guitar, and it's about her daughter. And at some point in time, your daughter will leave you. And she has this song that's very personal, like you were just describing. And it truly moved me. I'm not managing you, but that personal side, I'm just saying it works.
It's such a delicate balance.
It is. And there's got to be a vulnerability that goes along with pouring yourself out there where at the same time, there's the advantage of being vulnerable, but also, like you said in the lyric that I shared, there's some wonderful part about there being a little bit of mystery behind it as well. So maybe not so literal is what some people probably try to accomplish. So for your latest album, Siren Songs Volume 1, you've described it as not being your, in quotes, big follow-up record. Instead, the one you're talking about that's next is probably the big follow-up record. And you described that Siren Songs Volume 1 represents something else. Can you share what that record was about for you?
It's funny, Volume 2 is going to start dropping in May, and there's a couple of reasons why I did Siren Songs, and there's a through thread with it all. So as you mentioned, How Love Begins, I wrote all the music, and what I've realized is that, women supporting each other in this industry, some of my best friends in the industry are women, and so I'm always looking for an excuse to amplify women songwriters. So I was like, well, that's on brand from what I care about. And my first Grammy nomination was for my arrangement that I did with my husband of Dolly Parton's Jolene. This all kind of ties together.
Yeah, great song. And you were amazing on that, by the way.
Thank you. I just love that song. And, I started playing that song after I got my heart broken, and it ended up paying off 10 years later. So I took the songwriters that inspire me, but I also am focusing on songwriting as part of my major brand. I'm also making a book of living jazz singer-songwriters to create more of a community for the jazz singer-songwriter scene, because there's so many wonderful singers who don't write that are just recycling the same material over and over and over in jazz. And if they had one place to access music written by people that are alive and so excited about the genre, I think it would be a beautiful way to have everyone support each other. So there's that aspect of the next part of the thread. And then the final thread is The Devil I Knew is the next record that I wrote that will come out. So I think not being so precious with everything that you release and realizing that you have peaks and you have valleys and stuff can just come out in the middle. That is snapshots of time. Everything doesn't have to be like, and now she's doing right after her Grammy win, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I am taking that pressure right off.
That's a lot of pressure.
So much pressure. So I was like, I'm not even hiring a publicist. I'm like, here's just some beautiful music that I love, that I didn't write, and I arranged with my band, and it's just lovely. So enjoy. And if you don't like it, I don't care.
But aside from it being music that you love and it being lovely, it also is inspiring to the people that, like you said, maybe they're looking for an outlet to find things like that from a jazz musician that can inspire them. And I actually, when I listened to it and I was looking at the songs you selected, I thought, boy, she's gutsy. You're talking about Joni Mitchell. You're talking about Patty Griffin, Billie Eilish even. And
I know, pretty gutsy.
pretty gutsy, but you pull it off so beautifully. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
With the album that I'm going to continue to talk about, How Love Begins, when you won the Grammy, and in preparing for this podcast episode, I watched your acceptance speech.
I've never watched it.
Well, I'm going to talk about what you said, so buck up. I think you're going
Okay,
you're going to have to sit through this. So I first recognized, as I would imagine it would have been for anybody, an out-of-body experience, right? Just your name being called in that room at that time with all of the work and effort you had put into it, probably so many of the people you so admired for so long in the room. That's amazing. But when I watched your acceptance speech, I thought it was beautiful in so many ways. Beautiful in kind of much like your lyrics, you took advantage of the opportunity and you said something. I mean, it was only a minute long, so it wasn't hard or long to sit through. But what you said in a minute, I think, truly indicates who you are as a person, a songwriter, and a performer. And I think it also would create a blueprint for current young people who are looking to get into the business, to have a blueprint of, here's what it looks like. So if you could, and you've never watched it since, I'm going to remind you of a few of the things you said. And I have a little description of what I think each of these little nuggets accomplished. And hopefully we could talk about each one. You opened with saying you were moved by the recognition. So if you could, we'll go through these and just give me a snapshot of what that meant to you in that moment. Moved by the recognition.
I am very moved by this entire thing, by what you just said. So I'm all like for Clem. Forgive me. The recognition is peer-based. It's the only award in the entire world that is voted on by your peers, not by the numbers that you have garnered from social media, not by the labels and who they've deemed as the chosen one. It's by your peers, listening only. It is what it is. So I really was just beyond moved that they chose me.
It couldn't come from a better place than your peers. So the next thing that you referenced was thanking Black American music and women in the mix.
Yes.
So tell me about each of those things and what that meant to you.
Without Black American music, there is no jazz. And for me to not acknowledge the unbelievable culture and sacrifice and tradition that created an entire genre for me to live in, I have to acknowledge that, because Black American music is American music. And the women in the mix is, like I said before, the women in my life in the industry, or so many of my opportunities have come from fellow singers, fellow women, and amplifying each other. So I had to thank them at that moment.
The first part, being moved by the recognition, I was thinking along the lines of just a full demonstration of being humble, grateful, and passionate. And your checks at Black American music and women in the mix, paying homage to the history of jazz music and being excited about the future of the genre and having women get to the front of the line in the mix. I love that. You also talked about and thanked your husband, and you referenced holding steady through the storms. And you also talked about your mom and dad and Grandma Shirley.
Oh my gosh, I really haven't watched it. I'm so
Knowing those things, I don't know how hard you would have to explain what any of those mean, because it's probably pretty obvious, but the holding steady through the storms.
Anyone who's ever been married to anybody knows exactly what that means. You don't win a Grammy as an independent artist without making tremendous sacrifice. And one of those sacrifices is we don't have kids. You know what I mean? We are constantly on the road. We work together. We just won a Grammy together for his album, Bianca Reimagined Music for Pause and Persistence. And the amount of sacrifices that we have to make and the amount of times that we forfeit fun and love for business conversation is brutal. And so the storms are mighty, but that's where the love lies. It's super strong.
It's interesting, when I was taking a deep dive into anything Nicole Zuraitis has ever done, I stumbled upon a Jimmy Carter audiobook that you get a credit on.
I know, isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. It's actually so funny how it's analogous to what you just said, because in one of the chapters in that book, he talks about his relationship with his wife and how, like every normal couple, they argue. And it's okay to argue, but what he said he does, or they did as a practice, was to put away your anger before you went to bed.
I got to work that one out. Come on, Greg. We got to work it out. I'm going to take President Carter's advice myself. You know what? It's a good reminder.
That's right. It's a hard thing to do, though, because it's life sometimes gets in the way of that. Now, you also, just two more things that you had mentioned in your acceptance speech. One is that there were two people who believed in you when no one else seemed to, and I think you were referencing the producers, probably.
Yes, exactly. The theme of this podcast is how do you make a dream?
Dreams come true, yeah.
And the amount of no that I received throughout my career is staggering. And it felt like there was only three people in the entire world at that moment who believed in me. One was my husband, Dan Pugac, and the other were the two producers, Kabir Segal and Christian McBride, because everybody else had said no. I said, label, no. Magazines, blah, 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 no. All of the accolades that you seek, they're just no. But who said yes? I should have thanked the fourth person, which I did at the top, my peers. Because we're fighting the algorithm these days. There's no such thing as A&R coming to find talent. They found Roberta Flack, Les McCann, heard Roberta Flack singing in a bar. But guess what? Christian McBride heard me singing in a bar. So he pulled today's version of A&R by lending me his talent and his name so that I could try and fly for my sixth album. It wasn't my first time at the rodeo. I didn't go viral on TikTok and all of a sudden have a huge team. This is my sixth try to get people to listen.
It's a brutal industry, and you alluded to in the last point I would make from your acceptance speech, you actually just spoke about, where you reference persisting and enduring and for everybody else that's out there singing their hearts out in the back of a noisy bar, just a reminder, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to have grit.
Yeah, truly. The amount of imagining that I would do in the back of those bars, what stage I was on, while people were on their phones, while people are screaming and yelling across the tables. My imagination was stronger than the rejections that I was getting. And I think that's part of being a dreamer.
100%, I would agree about that. And the interesting thing is the producer, Christian McBride, he is lucky to have stopped in that bar that night and find in you what others may have passed on. And guess what? He was right.
He was.
He was right. So, if we could, just to get into one more category here, your acceptance speech kind of epitomizes what one of the reviews of your work said, that you have a heart full of soul and great emotional depth. And what resonated with me is in a 1-minute acceptance speech, you demonstrated both of those things, which I think is really, really special. So also, I mentioned earlier in the middle of a tour cycle, taking you all around the globe. And I've heard some artists say they love being in the studio and writing and creating and recording, and that's their thing. And I've heard others say that the creating part is a drag and it's all about performance. Where do you fall?
For me, as long as I'm making music, I'm happy. Even if I'm unhappy, and that's why I'm making the music. So that's really interesting because the mood and the music thing. If something has inspired me to write a song that's brutal, even if I'm actually writing the song, that's where I want to be. And if I'm on stage, I don't care where it is. I was just doing this tiny little bar in the Netherlands with the staff of the university that I was doing a teaching residency for a weekend. Happy as a clam. I love to be on stage. I love to be creating. I actually do like being in the studio, though I find it highly stressful because I don't like working against clock. That means money because time is money in studios. If I could take away the time is money thing and just have someone just be like, you have endless funds. Go take everyone and go live somewhere on a remote island for a month. That would be amazing, but that's not real. But in the meantime, as long as I'm making music, I'm happy performing, creating, or recording.
I would imagine, just to close up on the touring part, I started at the beginning talking about where some of your future shows are going to be, and it's rigorous. At the same time, it's, I'm sure exciting, and you're seeing the world. But is there a part of it, except for when you're on stage, that must be difficult?
I've decided that I always dreamed of being a touring musician. And now that I am touring, I have come to the conclusion that they're paying for me to get there, not for me to do the performance. I have the work ethic of a bull and I see the momentum and I see the rise. And so I'm chasing it because I don't take anything for granted. I don't expect the doors that are opening to stay open unless I myself jump through them. So it is extremely rigorous right now. Again, the sacrifices that my family made, like right now we just have a foster dog that we pay people to watch and when we leave and we tour, but I can be mobile right now.
And a wild ride, but I'm sure one that you absolutely love being on.
Yes, totally. Truly.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Nicole, I want to thank you for sharing some of your story with us, and maybe more importantly, thank you for sharing your music with the world in such an honest and sublime way, both entertaining and inspiring. And on behalf of all of us at Harmony Talk, thank you for being with us today.
Greg, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for the thoughtful questions and for just being a wonderful energy in this crazy world.
Thank you. I've been talking with Nicole Zuraitis, Grammy-winning jazz singer, songwriter, pianist, and arranger. To learn more about Nicole, please visit her website at NicoleZmusic.com, where you can visit her online store and check out dates for upcoming shows. You can also find Nicole on her socials at NicoleZmusic. I strongly encourage you to check out Nicole's music and recommend starting with her album, How Love Begins, which is described in a review by Step Tempest as a smashing album, excellent musicianship, led by a vocalist whose voice is inviting, intimate, playful, and emotionally real. An oral treat. And with all of that, I would totally agree. This has been Harmony Talk by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm Greg Frigoletto. Thank you to Nicole Zuraitis for being with us today. To our listeners, continue to dream and keep doing.